the home. Skyfox over that home right now, where multiple FBI agents are seen going in and out of this residence, carrying boxes of unspecified items. At one point, a neighbor with luggage in tow was escorted down the sidewalk by
leak investigation. Multiple top aides to Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth suspended in just the last 24 hours. And it comes only weeks after Hegseth shared details of the U.S. attack on Yemen in a Signal group.
A short time ago, this news that federal authorities are descending upon multiple Los Angeles locations this morning, as you can see there, executing search warrants at both the primary administrative offices of the nation's second largest.
On paper, Admiral Marcus Vey was untouchable, a decorated veteran, a Pentagon consultant, a trusted voice in border security briefings. But when FBI agents opened a storage unit outside San Diego, they didn't find cash first. They found maps. Not ordinary maps. Restricted movement grids, patrol windows, drone blind spots, and handwritten notes matching routes used by the Sinaloa Cartel. The first question wasn't, who leaked this? It was worse. How long had the cartel been reading America's border like an open book? For months, federal agents believed they were chasing a cartel logistics network moving fentanyl, cash, and weapons through the Southwest. What they didn't know was that the network had someone inside the system. Not a low-level clerk. Not a corrupt border guard. Someone who had sat in secure rooms, briefed commanders, and advised agencies on how to stop the very routes he was secretly helping protect. His name was Marcus Vey, retired Navy Admiral, former Joint Border Intelligence Advisor, publicly praised as a national security expert. Privately, according to the case file, he had become one of the most dangerous informants the cartel had ever bought. And the operation to bring him down started with something nobody expected. A traffic stop in Yuma, Arizona. At 11:38 p.m., Arizona state troopers pulled over a refrigerated produce truck heading west on Interstate 8. The driver looked calm. Too calm. His paperwork checked out. The produce was real. The cargo seal was intact. But the DEA task force officer standing nearby noticed one strange detail. The driver's route avoided every known checkpoint that had been reinforced that week. Not one or two. All of them. That should have been impossible. Checkpoint rotations were not public. Patrol patterns changed constantly. Certain surveillance corridors were shared only through restricted federal channels. Yet the driver had moved like he had a copy of the playbook. Inside the trailer, agents found crates of lettuce stacked in perfect rows. Behind them, sealed inside insulated panels, were 312 kilos of fentanyl pills, vacuum-packed cash, and encrypted satellite phones. But the drugs weren't the real discovery. The phones were. Because one device contained a message that sent the investigation in a direction nobody wanted to believe. Route Green. Admiral confirmed. At first, agents thought Admiral was a nickname. Cartel networks used coded titles all the time. Doctor, engineer, pastor, general. But this was different. The message had been sent 6 hours after a closed-door border intelligence briefing in El Paso. And the exact patrol changes discussed in that room were reflected in the truck's route. That was the first crack. Small enough to miss. Big enough to open an entire buried system. The FBI's Public Corruption Squad in San Diego joined the DEA's Special Operations Division, and a joint investigation quietly formed under the code name Operation Black Meridian. They started with the driver. His name was Luis Camacho. He claimed he was just hauling produce from Nogales to Los Angeles. But his phone told a different story. Not cartel boss messages. Not direct drug orders. Just coordinates. Clean. Precise. Military-style coordinates. They led agents to warehouses in Calexico, Tucson, Chula Vista, and Phoenix. Each location operated like part of a machine. One site received cash. One stored vehicles. One modified cargo trailers. One ran communications. And each site adjusted its activity days before federal enforcement surges. Someone wasn't just warning the cartel about raids. Someone was helping them understand the entire border system. That changed everything. Because a leak can expose one operation. But this looked like strategic intelligence. The kind that tells you where pressure is coming from before it arrives. The kind that lets a criminal network breathe around federal enforcement like smoke through a locked door. Then came the second anomaly. A DEA analyst in El Paso noticed that cartel movements spiked after certain advisory briefings. Not every briefing. Only the ones attended by a retired officer named Marcus Vey. Vey was not officially in command of anything. That made him harder to see. He wasn't signing warrants. He wasn't issuing orders. He wasn't wearing a uniform. He was a consultant. A trusted expert brought into interagency discussions because of his decades of experience. His job was to identify vulnerabilities at the border. According to investigators, he did exactly that. Then sold them. The problem was proof. Vey didn't communicate like a street-level informant. No obvious cartel contacts. No suspicious cash deposits at first glance. No flashy cars. No sudden mansion. He lived in Coronado, California, in a quiet home near the water, drove an older black SUV, and gave speeches about national security at veteran events. He looked boring. And that may have been his greatest disguise. But investigators kept digging. They subpoenaed financial records. They mapped travel. They pulled surveillance footage from airport lounges, private clubs, and hotel garages. And slowly the image changed. Vey had taken unexplained trips to Miami, Houston, and Mexico City. He had consulting income routed through 3 companies that barely existed. One was listed as a maritime risk firm. One as a logistics advisory group. One as a veteran-owned security education nonprofit. Together, they received $8.7 million over 2 years. The payments came through layers of shell vendors, most of them connected to import-export businesses along the border. On paper, everything looked professional. Invoices, contracts, advisory retainers. But there was one detail the FBI could not ignore. Several invoices were dated within 24 hours of major cartel shipments that successfully avoided federal operations. And every time, Vey's companies billed for the same service. Regional risk assessment. That phrase appeared again and again. A clean phrase for something dirty. The first major visual break came from a warehouse in Chula Vista. Agents had been watching the building for 9 days. From the outside, it looked like a low-level tire distribution center. Forklifts moved pallets. Workers smoked behind the loading dock. Delivery vans came and went. Then, one evening, a black Mercedes van arrived after midnight. 3 men got out. They didn't unload tires. They carried in 2 locked hard cases. The next morning, a federal judge approved a search warrant. At 5:26 a.m., FBI and DEA teams hit the warehouse. The front office was empty. The shop floor smelled like rubber and oil. A K-9. Alerted near a stack of commercial tires against the back wall. When agents moved the stack, they found a steel door painted the same color as the concrete. Behind it was a hidden room. Inside, server racks, radio scanners, forged commercial seals, stacks of prepaid phones, and a wall map of the California-Arizona border covered in colored pins. The red pins marked enforcement activity. The yellow pins marked camera towers. The green pins marked cartel corridors. On a folding table sat a laminated packet. It looked like an ordinary briefing handout. But an analyst immediately recognized the formatting. It matched a restricted federal border vulnerability assessment circulated 6 weeks earlier. Only 41 people had received it. Marcus Vey was one of them. That should have ended the debate. But the case was about to become much bigger. Because the cartel wasn't just paying for routes. They were paying for timing. When to move. When to wait. When to sacrifice a shipment as a distraction. Investigators found evidence that certain busts had been allowed to happen. Small loads. Expendable drivers. Cheap vehicles. Those seizures made headlines. They made enforcement look successful. But while cameras filmed agents pulling drugs from one truck, 3 larger shipments moved through another corridor. This was the mid-twist that chilled the task force. Some cartel losses weren't losses. They were theater. And the man allegedly helping design that theater understood how federal agencies measured success. Arrests. Seizure weight. Press releases. Public confidence. If the cartel could feed law enforcement small wins, it could protect the bigger machine behind them. That meant Operation Black Meridian was no longer just about bribery. It was about manipulation of the system itself. One DEA supervisor later described the pattern as a criminal network using enforcement metrics as camouflage. The human cost surfaced in Tucson. Her name was Angela Reeves. She was a 29-year-old emergency room nurse. One Saturday night, her younger brother Caleb was brought in after collapsing at a friend's apartment. He had taken 1 pill. He thought it was oxycodone. It wasn't. It was fentanyl pressed to look real. The batch was traced to a shipment that crossed near Yuma during a patrol gap investigators believed had been compromised. Angela didn't know Marcus Vey. She didn't know the Sinaloa network. She didn't know about shell companies or intelligence packets or coded invoices. All she knew was that her brother was alive at dinner and gone before sunrise. That is what made the case more than numbers. Every leaked patrol route had a consequence. Every warning sold to the cartel moved poison one step closer to someone's kitchen, school, dorm, or emergency room. And federal agents knew they had to move carefully. If they arrested Vey too soon, they might only catch the man, not the network. So they built the case around him. Phone metadata placed Vey near meetings with intermediaries. Encrypted messages referred to him as El Almirante. The Admiral, a cooperating cartel courier, confirmed that Vey never met street operators directly. He communicated through a lawyer in Houston, a shipping broker in Laredo, and a former defense contractor in Virginia. That contractor became the next target. His name was Nolan Price. Price had once worked on surveillance integration systems for border security projects. After leaving government contracting, he started a private analytics firm. Its website promised predictive risk modeling for commercial trade. But according to investigators, Price built dashboards that helped cartel logisticians estimate when and where federal pressure would shift. He wasn't giving them secret documents directly. He was converting stolen insight into usable strategy. Clean charts, color-coded risk scores, route confidence ratings. It looked like corporate software. It functioned like a cartel navigation system. And Vey, investigators believed, was the source feeding it. The second cinematic discovery came during a raid in Laredo, Texas. Federal agents entered a shipping office attached to a customs brokerage firm. The lobby had framed certificates on the wall. A receptionist desk. Coffee still warm in the break room. Nothing looked criminal. Then an ICE Homeland Security Investigations agent noticed the floor behind the file cabinets sounded hollow. They pulled the cabinets away. Underneath was a concealed trapdoor. Inside the crawlspace were 12 black duffel bags. Not drugs. Cash. $4.2 million in bundled U.S. currency, sealed in plastic, alongside notebooks containing coded references to naval weather, green water, and Admiral windows. Those weren't weather notes. They were movement periods. Cartel windows. Times when routes were safest. After Laredo, the DOJ authorized the final phase. They wanted simultaneous arrests in California, Arizona, Texas, and Florida. But before the takedown, investigators needed one final link tying Vey to the transfer of restricted information. They got it from an unexpected place. A printer. At Vey's Coronado home, agents later found a high-end office printer with internal memory. Forensics recovered partial print logs. One document title appeared 3 times. Southwest Border Air Surveillance Allocation Draft. The same document appeared on a cartel server seized in Chula Vista. The file had been stripped of metadata, but the printed version left behind tiny tracking dots, nearly invisible to the eye. Those dots helped analysts identify the printer model, date, and approximate source. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a confession. It was better. It was physical evidence. A quiet machine in a quiet home had remembered what the suspect tried to erase. The takedown came before dawn. In Coronado, FBI agents surrounded Vey's home while DEA teams hit linked properties in Phoenix, Houston, Laredo, and Miami. Neighbors saw black SUVs roll silently down the street. No sirens. No shouting at first. Just agents moving with rifles angled low, crossing wet pavement under porch lights. At 6:02 a.m., the warrant team breached the front door. Inside, Vey was in the hallway wearing a robe. He reportedly asked one question. Is this about the consulting contracts? That line mattered. Agents had not mentioned contracts. Not yet. In the study, they found framed medals, naval photographs, and shelves of books on strategy and national defense. Behind one bookshelf, agents discovered a wall safe. Inside were foreign bank tokens, encrypted drives, a passport card, and a handwritten list of initials. Next to several initials were dollar amounts. Next to one was a phrase. Border eyes. The drives took weeks to decrypt. When they opened, the full picture emerged. Vey had allegedly sold 3 categories of information. First, patrol timing. Second, surveillance vulnerabilities. Third, internal debates between agencies. That third category was the most dangerous, because it didn't just tell the cartel where agents were. It told them what agencies disagreed about, where coordination was weak, where budgets were strained, where one office thought another office would act, but didn't. That is how a cartel survives pressure. Not by being stronger than the government, by finding the seams. And Vey knew the seams better than anyone. The indictment described a network that moved at least 18 major shipments across the Southwest using compromised intelligence. Federal prosecutors estimated the total street value at over $300 million. They also alleged that cartel-linked brokers paid more than $11 million through shell entities tied to Vey, Price, and several logistics intermediaries. But the number that haunted investigators wasn't $300 million.
It was 18.
18 shipments that moved because someone with clearance chose money over duty. 18 chances for families like Angela Reeves's to be destroyed. 18 reminders that corruption at the top doesn't look like a bag of cash in a dark alley. Sometimes it looks like a keynote speech.
A consulting invoice.
A veteran pin on a suit jacket. A man everyone trusts walking into a secure room and walking out with a product to sell. The final realization hit the task force during a closed DOJ briefing. A prosecutor laid out the timeline on a screen. Dates of briefings.
Dates of payments.
Dates of cartel movements. Dates of overdose clusters. For the first time, the pattern looked undeniable. Not random. Not isolated. Not one corrupt man doing occasional favors.
A system.
A marketplace for border intelligence. Vey was the anchor, but he wasn't alone. Nolan Price converted intelligence into software. The Houston lawyer moved money. The Laredo broker hid cash. The Miami shell companies washed payments. And cartel logisticians used the whole machine to move product through the country. That was the deeper horror. The cartel had not just bribed a person. It had built a private intelligence pipeline inside America's own security architecture. And for almost 2 years, it worked. When the DOJ announced the charges, the language was careful. Conspiracy.
Bribery.
Money laundering. Disclosure of restricted information. Material support to narcotics trafficking operations. But behind those legal phrases was a simpler truth. A decorated insider had allegedly helped a cartel outthink the people trying to stop it. Vey's defense claimed he was being framed by contractors and criminals trying to reduce their own sentences. His attorneys argued that the documents were taken out of context, the payments were legitimate consulting income, and the government had built a case on coincidence. But prosecutors said coincidence does not create matching routes. Coincidence does not produce cartel maps with restricted data. Coincidence does not place federal documents on cartel servers. And coincidence does not explain millions of dollars flowing through fake companies every time a shipment slips through. The case left agencies with painful questions. How many consultants had too much access? How many retired officials moved between government trust and private money without enough scrutiny? How many systems were designed to detect street-level corruption, but not elite betrayal? Because that was the core failure. The government was watching the border. The cartel was watching the government. And Marcus Vey allegedly gave them the view. In the months after the raids, federal teams dismantled parts of the network. Warehouses were seized.
Accounts were frozen.
Brokers were arrested. Several cooperating witnesses entered protection. But investigators knew the larger lesson would outlive the case. Cartels do not always win by violence. Sometimes they win by patience.
They study institutions.
They identify frustrated insiders. They find people with access, ego, debt, resentment, or greed. Then they don't ask for everything. They ask for one detail.
One schedule. One report. One blind spot.
And once that person crosses the line, the price only goes up. That is how a decorated admiral becomes a cartel asset.
Not all at once. Step by step.
Until the man who once defended the country is allegedly selling pieces of it to the highest bidder. The raids made headlines. The arrests looked like victory. But the real ending was darker. Because every exposed network raises the same question. Was this the only pipeline? Or just the first one they finally caught? And if a cartel can buy its way into rooms built to protect the public, what does that say about every system we trust but never see? Drop your thoughts below. Was Marcus Vey just one corrupt insider? Or was he proof that the most dangerous border breach doesn't happen in the desert? It happens behind a locked conference room door.